The exam paper trembled in Isabel Lawrence's hands. Red ink screamed across the page like open wounds. Fail. 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 In the silence of her father's glass-walled office, the sound of that word echoed louder than any explosion of anger could. Across the room, her father didn't look up from his laptop. His voice was cold, measured, businesslike. Do you have any idea what failure means to this family, Isabel? She wanted to answer, to tell him that failure was all she ever felt, no matter how hard she tried. But the words choked behind a practiced smile. That night, as she slipped out of her limousine into the dim back hallway of her elite school, she saw a girl her age wiping chalk dust from the floors. The girl looked up, steady eyes, tired hands, and whispered, "You're not stupid. You're just broken where no one looked." It was the first time anyone had seen her, and it would change everything. Isabel Lawrence's world looked perfect from the outside, like a painting no one dared to touch. The Loron mansion stood on a hill above the city, all glass and silence, where even the wind seemed to whisper in money's language. Every morning, Isabel's driver waited at the marble steps, and every morning she climbed into the car with her uniform pressed, her smile fixed, and her stomach heavy with dread. She was the daughter of Victor Loron, the billionaire who owned half the skyline, the man whose name meant power, precision, and perfection. But inside, Isabel felt like a counterfeit version of herself, something beautiful but empty, a reflection built for someone else to admire. At school, teachers lowered their voices when she entered. The other girls either envied her or avoided her, unsure if they should talk to the daughter of a man who could buy the school if he wanted to. Isabel sat in the front row, wrote what she thought were the right answers, and still, every paper came back bleeding with red marks. Fail. 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 It wasn't that she didn't study. It was that her mind, weighed down by fear, never let her breathe long enough to think. She carried notebooks filled with half-finished thoughts and crossed-out dreams. Her father never shouted. That almost made it worse. He would simply stare at her across the dinner table, a fork motionless in his hand, and say, "I thought you were better than this." And then he'd go back to checking his phone. The silence after those words was louder than any thunder. That night, the household buzzed with soft echoes. The chef cleaning the counters, the maid folding linens, the faint hum of a distant television. Isabel sat on her bed, surrounded by textbooks and failure. On the wall opposite her bed was a massive photograph of her father shaking hands with world leaders. Beneath it, a small photo of her mother, smiling, wind in her hair, before she passed away years ago. Sometimes Isabel spoke to that picture, whispering things she could never tell anyone else. "I'm trying, Mom," she said softly. "I really am." Somewhere far below the mansion's shining floors, in the maintenance corridor that smelled faintly of bleach and detergent, another girl was finishing her shift. Mira Santos had been helping her mother clean offices since she was 12. Her mother always said, "Keep your head down, and they'll never see you as trouble." But Mira never liked being invisible. She liked to notice things, the way dust gathered in corners where no one looked, the quiet sadness behind the eyes of rich kids in hallways too quiet to be happy. When she worked at the elite academy at night, she would often see the name Isabel Loron on exam boards, marked in red. She'd pause, mop in hand, and wonder what kind of pain a girl with everything could possibly feel. It wasn't envy she felt, it was curiosity. "Rich people cry too, right?" she whispered once, and her mother scolded her softly. "Don't say things like that, Mira. Their world isn't ours." But Mira couldn't stop wondering. What if pain didn't care about worlds? The next morning, the academy buzzed with whispers. Isabel had failed again. A math test this time. Her teacher, Mrs. Dunham, sighed heavily as she placed the paper on her desk. "Isabel, you're not even trying anymore. Is everything okay at home?" The question was kind, but it hit like a slap. Isabel nodded quickly, eyes down. Everything's fine. The lie burned on her tongue. By lunch, everyone knew. Her so-called friends, those girls with perfect curls and practiced smiles, sat whispering behind manicured hands. Imagine failing again. Must be nice knowing Daddy will still buy your grades eventually. Isabel ate alone in the courtyard, pretending not to hear. Above her, the sun shone too brightly, mocking her quiet misery. That evening, as the halls emptied, Isabel lingered behind. She wanted to stay invisible for a while. She wandered into the art studio, where light spilled across the floor like liquid gold. That's when she heard a faint humming, a melody low and pure. She turned and saw a girl her age wiping the floor with slow, rhythmic motions. Mira. Their eyes met for a second. Mira froze, mop in hand, as if she'd been caught trespassing in someone's dream. "You can keep cleaning," Isabel said softly. "I'm just thinking." Mira hesitated, then nodded. "Sorry, Mississippi. I'll be quick." Isabel studied her. There was something different about this girl. Her movements were calm, deliberate, almost graceful. And that song, so hauntingly familiar. "What song is that?" Isabel asked quietly. Mira looked up, surprised. "An old lullaby. My mother used to sing it when I was scared." Isabel's throat tightened. "You're lucky. My mother used to, too." Before she stopped. Mira didn't ask what happened. She simply nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. For the first time in a long time, Isabel didn't feel like the richest girl in the room. She felt small, human, and strangely safe. Later that night, as she walked toward the exit, she heard Mira whisper to her mother in the distance. "That girl, she looks like she's carrying something heavy." Her mother replied, "Everyone carries something, Mira. But people like her, no one ever helps them carry it." Those words stayed with Isabel long after she climbed back into her car. That night, as rain slid down the windows of her mansion, she couldn't stop hearing that sentence echo in her head. No one ever helps them carry it. She stared at her reflection and whispered, "Maybe I wouldn't fail if someone just helped me carry it." Meanwhile, Mira sat at her kitchen table in their tiny apartment, helping her younger brother with homework. The walls were thin. Laughter and arguments from neighbors seeped through like old wallpaper. She thought about the billionaire's daughter, those distant, lost eyes. She'd seen that same look in herself once, after her father left. She wondered if maybe loneliness sounded the same in every house, whether it had marble floors or cracked tiles. The next day, fate decided to twist their paths closer. The school held an annual charity event, a night of glitter, speeches, and silent judgment. Victor Laurent would attend, as always, with Isabel by his side. Myra's mother had been assigned to clean the ballroom after the event, and Mira came along to help. As the guests toasted champagne, Isabel stood beside her father, trying to look proud. But her eyes kept drifting toward the glass walls where staff moved like shadows, unseen and unheard. Then she spotted Mira again, dressed in her cleaning uniform, moving with quiet dignity between tables. Their gazes met once more. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition, maybe even defiance. Later, when the hall emptied and the music died, Isabel slipped away from the limelight and wandered backstage. She found Mira stacking chairs. "You shouldn't be here," Mira said softly, glancing around. "Neither should you," Isabel replied, half smiling. "Not in this world, anyway." Mira hesitated, then said, "You don't have to talk to me, you know. I'm just the cleaner's daughter." Isabel shook her head slowly. "No, you're the only one who's actually said something real to me." For a moment, silence filled the room, comfortable, heavy, alive. Isabel looked around at the empty tables, the glittering leftovers of a night meant to show perfection. "Everyone thinks I have everything," she whispered. "But I can't even pass a test." Mira placed the last chair down and said, "Maybe it's not the test you're failing." Isabel frowned. "Then what?" Myra's eyes softened. "Maybe it's the love you're not getting." Isabel blinked. It was such a simple sentence, but it hit harder than any insult or lecture. For the first time, someone had spoken the truth she'd been afraid to admit. "You don't even know me," Isabel whispered. "Maybe not, but I see you." Isabel felt her throat tighten again, the same way it had in her father's office. She didn't cry. She never allowed herself that luxury, but something inside her cracked just a little. As Isabel left that night, her mind replayed Myra's words over and over. "Maybe it's not the test you're failing. Maybe it's the love you're not getting." The city lights blurred through her tears as the car drove away. Somewhere deep down, she realized that this girl, this cleaner's daughter, might be the only person who could show her what she'd been missing. She didn't know that by the time the next exam came, the secret Mira would show her wouldn't just change her grades. It would change her father's heart, too. For now, all she could do was feel the quiet beginnings of something new stirring inside her. Hope, fragile and unfamiliar. And as the night settled over the city, two girls from different worlds dreamed unknowingly of the same thing: to finally be seen for who they truly were. Maybe you've known that feeling too, the kind where success looks beautiful on the outside, but feels hollow inside. Have you ever wished someone would just see the truth behind your effort, behind your silence? If you have, tell me, what would you have wanted that person to say to you? Maybe your words will be what someone else needs to hear. The morning after the charity gala, the Loron mansion was unervingly quiet. Isabel sat at the long breakfast table, untouched toast in front of her, staring out at the manicured garden beyond the glass wall. Her father was on a call, voice low but clipped, discussing profits, expansions, and deadlines. Always something important. Always something that wasn't her. She waited for him to hang up, hoping, just hoping, that he would ask how the event went, or how she was feeling, or even whether she liked the new piano tutor he'd hired. But all he said was, "You have another exam on Friday. I expect results this time." She nodded, swallowing the ache that rose in her throat. After he left, the silence became unbearable. She pushed her plate away and walked outside into the crisp air where the gardener trimmed the roses. They were perfect, too. Every petal symmetrical, every thorn hidden beneath manicured beauty. She thought about Myra's words. Maybe it's not the test you're failing. Maybe it's the love you're not getting. That sentence wouldn't stop echoing in her mind. It felt like a truth she had always known, but never had the courage to say aloud. That afternoon, Isabel went back to school early, long before her classmates arrived. The halls were still, sunlight cutting through tall windows. She wandered aimlessly until she found herself standing outside the janitor's closet, where she'd seen Mira the night before. The door was half open. Inside, Mira was sorting cleaning supplies, earbuds in, humming that same soft melody. Isabel knocked gently on the doorframe. Mira turned, startled, one earbud falling loose. "Oh, it's you," she said. "I didn't think you'd come down here." "I didn't think I would either," Isabel replied, managing a nervous smile. "But I needed to talk to you." Mira wiped her hands on a rag. "Talk to me? What?" Isabel hesitated. "Because you said something last night that I can't stop thinking about." Mira tilted her head slightly. "About the love?" Isabel nodded slowly. "You were right. I don't think I've ever felt it. Not really. Not the kind that helps you breathe." Myra's eyes softened. "You don't need to explain. You can just sit." Isabel sat on an overturned bucket, an odd sight. Billionaire's daughter on a cleaner's stool. For the first time, she didn't care how it looked. "I keep trying to be perfect," Isabel said quietly. "But no matter what I do, my father just sees numbers. Grades. Success. Failure. I'm scared I'll never be enough." Mira leaned against the counter. "He probably thinks he's helping. Some people show love like that, by pushing. But sometimes they forget to hold." Isabel looked up. "Did your father hold you?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Myra's smile faded slightly. "He used to," she said softly. "Before he left." Silence lingered between them, a silence that felt oddly safe. Then Isabel said, "I have an exam Friday. Math. I can't fail again. I don't even understand half the formulas." Mira hesitated, then said, "I'm actually good at math." Isabel blinked. "You are?" "Yeah. I used to help my brother before and after school. He hated it until I taught him through stories instead of numbers. Sometimes you just need to see the world differently." Isabel frowned. "What do you mean?" Mira reached for a whiteboard leaning against the wall and began drawing circles and lines. "Think of it like this. You're solving not for numbers, but for balance. Every equation wants to be even, like two sides of a story. If one side gives too much, the other breaks." Isabel stared at her, stunned. "No teacher has ever explained it like that." Mira shrugged. "Maybe they don't know how to speak your language." For the first time in weeks, Isabel laughed, a small surprise sound. You should be the teacher, she said. Mira smiled. No one would listen. I would, Isabel said softly. And she meant it. Over the next few days, Isabel found herself seeking Mira out after classes. They met in quiet corners, empty classrooms, the back of the library, the cleaning storage room that now felt like their secret world. Mira would explain things in ways that made sense, not just formulas but feelings. See, when you rush to find answers, you forget to understand the question first, she said once. Math is just like people. You can't solve them until you see what they're asking for. Isabel started to see patterns where before she saw chaos. Her grades began to rise, but more importantly, her heart began to thaw. Myra's friendship felt like sunlight breaking through fog. She had never known what it felt like to be truly seen, not as Victor Lawrence's daughter, but as Isabel, the girl who loved art, who dreamed of painting oceans, who sometimes wrote poetry in the margins of her notes. Mira listened without judgment, and in return, Isabel learned to listen too. But secrets have a way of finding cracks. One evening, after study hours, Victor arrived at the academy unannounced. He had been informed by a teacher that Isabel's progress had suddenly improved. He wanted to see what changed. He found her in the janitor's closet with Mira, laughing over a math problem drawn on the wall. For a moment, he just stared. His daughter, his only child, sitting on the floor beside a cleaner's daughter, giggling like a child again. Isabel, he said sharply. Both girls froze. Isabel's face went pale. Dad, I can explain. Explain what? Victor's tone was cutting cold. That you're wasting your time in a janitor's closet with the help? Mira stood quickly, clutching the rag in her hand, her face burning. Sir, I was just quiet, Victor snapped. You're paid to clean, not to socialize. Isabel stood, trembling. She's helping me, Dad. She's the reason I finally understand. Enough. His voice boomed through the hall. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? You think I built everything I have so my daughter could learn from a cleaner? The silence that followed was suffocating. Mira lowered her head, tears threatening. Isabel stepped forward, her voice shaking. Maybe that's exactly what you built, Dad. Maybe you built walls so high that you can't even see who's standing on the other side. Victor's eyes hardened. Go to the car. Now. Isabel hesitated, then turned to Mira. I'm sorry, she whispered. Mira forced a small smile. Don't be. Some truths take longer to reach people like him. Isabel followed her father out, heart pounding. That night, the car ride home was silent. Victor's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Finally, he spoke. You're not to see that girl again. Do you understand me? Isabel's voice was barely audible. She's my friend. She's a distraction. And I won't have you embarrassing this family. Isabel stared out the window, watching the city lights blur. You don't even know what embarrassment is, she said quietly. It's pretending to be perfect while everything inside you is falling apart. He didn't answer. When they reached home, Isabel went straight to her room, slammed the door, and for the first time, she let herself cry without holding back. Down in the servants' quarters of the school, Mira sat with her mother, trying to hold back her own tears. Maybe I shouldn't have talked to her, she said. Her mother shook her head. You did nothing wrong, Mira. Sometimes the truth makes powerful people uncomfortable. But she looks so scared, Mira whispered. She's not like them. Then maybe, her mother said gently, it's your job to remind her who she is. Days passed. Isabel kept her head down, pretending to focus on school, but the ache of that moment wouldn't leave her. Every room felt colder. Every test emptier. She wanted to see Mira again, to thank her, to apologize, to understand what she had meant about truths and balance. The exam came on Friday. Isabel sat at her desk, pencil trembling, and something inside her shifted. She remembered Myra's voice. You can't solve them until you see what they're asking for. She looked at the first question differently this time. She didn't rush. She breathed. She thought. And for the first time in her life, the numbers began to make sense. When she finished, she wasn't sure what she felt. Relief, disbelief, hope. That evening, she waited outside the janitor's closet, hoping to see Mira. When she finally appeared, Isabel held out her exam paper, trembling, tears in her eyes. I passed, she whispered. Mira smiled, her eyes glistening. I knew you would. I wish my dad knew, Isabel said softly. He will, Mira replied. Someday. They stood there in quiet victory, two girls from different worlds bound by something that had nothing to do with grades or status, something real. Isabel realized then that the real secret Mira had shown her wasn't how to solve equations. It was how to see herself. She wasn't a failure. She was simply waiting for someone to remind her that she was enough. Sometimes the smallest voice in the quietest corner becomes the spark that changes everything. Maybe that's what love looks like, seeing someone's worth before they do. Have you ever met someone who helped you see yourself differently? Who showed you a truth you didn't know you needed? If you have, hold on to that person. And if you haven't yet, maybe this story is a reminder. Sometimes the secret that saves you doesn't come from those above you. It comes from those who stand beside you when no one else will. When the results were released, Isabel's name wasn't at the bottom of the list anymore. For the first time, it gleamed near the top. Nothing extraordinary by her father's standards, but to her it was proof that she wasn't broken. Yet Victor Laurent didn't see triumph. He saw suspicion. Over breakfast, he held the results slip like evidence in a trial. You jumped from failure to distinction in 2 weeks, he said flatly. How? Isabel kept her eyes down. I studied differently. Differently, he repeated, as if the word offended him. With whom? By myself, she lied, because she could already feel the trap closing. He set the paper down. You think I don't know? The staff talk. The teachers talk. You're sneaking around with that cleaner's daughter again. Isabel's pulse pounded in her ears. Her name is Mira. I don't care what her name is, he snapped. Whatever trick she's using, cheating, stealing answers, it ends now. She stood abruptly, voice shaking. She didn't cheat for me. She helped me understand. He laughed once, a sound without warmth. Understand? Isabel, people like her clean up after people like us. That's their place. The words sliced through her. Maybe that's what's wrong with this family, she said quietly. We only see people by their place. He stared at her as if she'd just cursed the Laurent name. Enough. You will not see her again, or I'll have her mother fired by sunset. She felt the room spin, her throat close. You can't. Watch me. He turned back to his laptop as though that ended the conversation. Isabel left before the tears fell. At school, the distance between her and Mira became a physical ache. Mira noticed it instantly. In the hallways, Isabel avoided eye contact. She walked past like a stranger, shoulders tense, eyes clouded with apology she couldn't voice. When Mira tried to approach her after class, Isabel whispered, Don't. My father will find out. Mira froze, searching her face. You're scared of him. Isabel swallowed. You don't understand what he can do. Maybe I don't, Mira said softly. But I understand what it feels like to lose yourself because someone else says you should. Isabel turned away, tears glimmering but unfallen. That night, Myra's mother came home from work with her apron balled in her hands. Mira, she said, her voice trembling. Mr. Laurent called the supervisor. They're cutting my hours. They said you've been distracting his daughter. Mira felt her stomach drop. Mom, no, it's not. I don't care what it is, her mother said, exhausted. We can't afford trouble. You stay away from that girl. Mira nodded numbly, but anger simmered underneath the guilt. Why was it always the powerless who had to pay for honesty? Over the following days, Isabel tried to bury herself in schoolwork, but every number blurred. Every word became meaningless. She caught herself reaching for her phone, wanting to message Mira, then remembering she didn't even have her number. Just memories, just the sound of that quiet humming that had once steadied her. The loneliness she'd known before felt sharper now, like hunger returning after a taste of real food. At dinner, Victor spoke about business expansions, mergers, and partnerships. She heard none of it. You should be proud, he said. You've finally proven you're Laurent. Isabel looked up, voice low. If being a Laurent means pretending not to feel, then I don't want it. He froze mid-sip, his eyes narrowing. Careful. Or what? She asked, her voice trembling but steady. You'll cut me off like you cut everyone else off? His jaw tightened. Finish your meal. She pushed her plate away. I'm done pretending this is a family. That night she escaped to the balcony, city lights stretching below like distant stars she couldn't touch. The rain began again, soft, persistent. Somewhere out there, Mira was probably still cleaning those empty halls, unseen, unheard. Isabel whispered into the wind. I'm sorry. Mira wasn't sleeping either. She sat by the window of their tiny apartment, staring at the leaking streetlight outside. Her brother slept soundly on the couch, her mother's snores faint in the next room. She thought of Isabel's face that day, pale and frightened, and the words her mother had said. Asterisk, stay away. Asterisk, but how could she, when her heart was tangled in someone else's pain? Maybe caring for someone meant breaking the rules built to keep you apart. Maybe courage wasn't loud. Maybe it was quiet persistence in the face of fear. At school the next morning, Mira saw Isabel sitting alone on the steps behind the gym. She hesitated only a moment before walking over. You look awful, Mira said softly. Isabel let out a small laugh, half sob, half relief. I missed you. Mira sat beside her. Your father. He had my mom's hours cut. Isabel flinched. I didn't know he'd actually do it. You could have warned me. I thought if I stayed away, he'd stop. Did he? Mira asked. Isabel shook her head slowly. No, he's never satisfied. I could become everything he wants, and it still wouldn't be enough. Mira looked at her, really looked at her. The shaking hands, the exhaustion under her eyes, the faint ink marks on her wrists from hours of restless note-taking. You're killing yourself for his approval, she said quietly. And for what? A smile that never comes. Isabel wiped her eyes. What else am I supposed to do? Maybe stop chasing a man who doesn't know how to love, Mira said, her voice steady. Maybe start learning how to love yourself instead. Isabel stared at her, the truth burning. You talk like it's easy. It's not, but it's worth it. For a long moment they sat there, two worlds collapsing quietly into one shared silence. Then the bell rang, shattering it. Isabel stood, heart racing. If he sees us, then he'll see, Mira interrupted. I'm not hiding anymore. But fate wasn't ready for defiance yet. That afternoon, Victor arrived early to pick Isabel up. From the parking lot, he saw the two girls talking beneath the old oak tree. Laughter drifted through the air. Something pure, something that didn't belong to the world he controlled. His face darkened. By evening, he had already called the principal, demanding that Mira and her mother be dismissed from the cleaning contract entirely. When Isabel returned to school the next day, the janitor's closet was empty. The smell of disinfectant lingered, but the warmth was gone. A new crew had been hired overnight. Panic clawed at her chest. She found the supervisor. Where's Mira? The woman frowned. The Santos family no longer works here. Where? Isabel pressed. I'm sorry, Miss Laurent. I don't have that information. Isabel ran out of the building, phone clutched in her hand, tears burning hot. She'd lost the only person who'd ever seen her. That evening, she stormed into her father's office. You fire them. I protected you. He corrected without looking up from his desk. You destroyed them, she hissed. You took away their income because I dared to have a friend. You're too naive to understand how the world works. Then I don't want your world, she said, voice breaking. I hate it. I hate what it's turned me into. His gaze snapped up ice cold. Watch your tone. Or what? She whispered, trembling. You'll throw me out too? He stood, towering, but she didn't flinch. You're just like her, he said suddenly. The words froze her. Like who? Your mother. Always emotional. Always chasing feelings instead of results. Isabel's breath caught. Don't talk about her. She left because she couldn't handle this life, he said sharply. She didn't leave. Isabel shot back. She died, trying to make you see her. Silence slammed down between them. Then she turned and walked out, leaving him alone with the ghosts he'd buried under success. Outside, the rain had turned heavy, soaking her uniform, but she didn't care. She walked until her legs ached, until the city lights blurred into tears. Somewhere, she promised herself she would find Mira. She didn't know where to start, but she knew she had to try. Mira, meanwhile, was helping her mother pack boxes in their small apartment. They'd been reassigned to another district, another school. It's for the best, her mother said, avoiding her eyes. People like us can't afford trouble. Mira folded a blanket silently. Maybe trouble is what makes change, she whispered. Her mother sighed. Change doesn't pay the bills. Mira bit her lip, but said nothing more. That night, as the city slept, both girls lay awake in separate worlds, hearts aching with the same thought. They'd found something rare and lost it because truth was too expensive for the powerful. Resistance had taken its toll. They were both retreating into silence again, but silence no longer felt safe. Maybe you've known that same kind of silence, the one that grows between people who care but can't find a way to bridge the distance. Have you ever been forced to walk away from someone who made you feel alive just because the world said you shouldn't? What did you do with that ache? Tell me, because maybe your answer is the one someone else is searching for tonight. The night had not stopped raining. By morning, the city was flooded in gray light, gutters overflowing, traffic stalled, the kind of day when the world itself seemed unwilling to move forward. Isabel hadn't slept. She sat by her bedroom window, eyes swollen, watching the water streak down the glass like the tears she'd run out of. Somewhere beyond those clouds, Mira was gone, pushed out of her life by the man who called himself her protector. She felt a hollowness she couldn't name, the silence of a house too large for a single heart. Then her phone buzzed, an emergency alert from the academy. Heavy rainfall had caused structural leaks in several classrooms. Students were being redirected to the old building, the one long closed for renovations. She read it twice, barely caring, until she noticed the attached line. Temporary cleaning staff from partner schools assigned for emergency maintenance. Her pulse quickened. Partner schools. That could mean anything, or it could mean her. She dressed quickly, ignoring the servant's questions, and asked the driver to take her early. The school grounds were soaked. Puddles mirrored the gray sky. Inside, the corridors smelled of damp plaster and disinfectant. And then she heard it, soft humming echoing from the hallway near the old wing. That same lullaby, low and steady, cutting through the drizzle like a heartbeat she'd been missing. She followed the sound. At the end of the corridor, under flickering lights, stood Mira in a yellow raincoat, wringing out a mop. For a second, neither moved, both half believing they were imagining it. Then Mira turned, eyes widening. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice trembling between surprise and warning. Isabel stepped closer. "You came back." "Not exactly," Mira said. "They reassigned us here because of the flood. Temporary." "Then fate likes irony," Isabel murmured. Mira looked away. "Your father probably doesn't." A loud crack interrupted them. The ceiling near the stairwell groaned under the weight of collected water, then burst. A rush of water cascaded through the hall. Isabel screamed as Mira grabbed her arm, pulling her out of the way. The torrent flooded the floor in seconds. "This wing isn't safe," Mira shouted. "We need to get upstairs." Together they ran, slipping on wet tiles until they reached the art room, the only door that wasn't locked. They slammed it shut behind them. Rain drummed against the windows. Water seeped under the door. The old building moaned like a wounded animal. They were trapped until help arrived. Breathless, Isabel laughed shakily. "Guess this is what you meant by balance," she said. Mira gave a small, incredulous smile. "Yeah, life likes extremes." For a while, they just listened to the storm. Then Isabel said quietly, "He fired you. He took everything from you. You should hate me." Mira shrugged. "I don't hate you. I hate the world that makes kindness a privilege." Isabel sank to the floor, knees drawn to her chest. "He doesn't see what he's done. He thinks control is love." Mira sat beside her. "Maybe he's scared. Power makes people forget they're human." "And what about me?" Isabel asked. "What does failure make me?" Mira looked at her gently. "Human too." Lightning flashed, illuminating their faces. The billionaire's daughter and the cleaner's daughter, sitting side by side in soaked uniforms. For a moment, the class divide evaporated. Mira took off her raincoat and draped it over Isabel's shoulders. "You're freezing," Isabel whispered. "Why you still care?" "Because someone once cared for me when I didn't deserve it." "Who?" "My teacher, years ago." She said I saw the world too clearly to stay invisible. I guess I never forgot that. Isabel studied her face, the way her eyes softened when she spoke. You're braver than anyone I know, she said. Mira shook her head. I'm just tired of pretending the world can't change. Outside, thunder rolled. The lights flickered once, then died. Darkness swallowed the room except for the thin silver glow of lightning through the rain. Isabel shivered, her voice small. I'm scared of what he'll do when he finds out you're here. Then don't tell him, Mira said softly. Not yet. Isabel laughed bitterly. Secrets always find a way out. Then let them, Mira whispered. Let truth do what it's meant to do, break and heal. They sat in silence, shoulders touching. Time blurred, the storm a steady heartbeat around them. Then Isabel said, when I passed that exam, he didn't even congratulate me. He just asked how. He couldn't believe I'd done it without cheating. Myra's jaw tightened. Because he measures worth in numbers. You're trying to prove something that can't be measured. Isabel turned to her. Then what should I prove? Mira smiled faintly. That you're still capable of joy. Isabel looked down. Joy feels selfish. It isn't. It's rebellion. The wind howled through the cracked window. Mira stood and peered outside. The courtyard's flooded. We'll have to wait it out. Isabel followed, standing beside her. Below them, the world was a blur of gray water and scattered debris. It's kind of beautiful, Isabel whispered. Even broken things can be, Mira said. Hours passed. They talked about everything they'd never had time for. Dreams, fears, the mothers they'd both lost in different ways. Isabel confessed that she wanted to paint, not manage her father's empire. Mira admitted she wrote poems on napkins she could never afford to waste. Their words filled the dark like soft lanterns. Somewhere amid the storm, laughter returned, hesitant at first, then real. When rescuers finally arrived, breaking through the locked door, they found the two girls sitting side by side on the art room floor, hands streaked with paint and dust, sketches scattered around them. They looked less like victims and more like survivors. One of the teachers scolded them gently for staying inside. Another called Victor Laurent to inform him that his daughter was safe. Later that night, when the storm eased, Victor arrived at the school, his expression a mask of fury and fear. He saw Mira first, helping others clean up the mess. She looked up at him, steady, unflinching. For the first time, he saw not a cleaner's daughter, but a person who'd risked herself for his child. Isabel stepped forward. She saved my life. He said nothing, only nodded stiffly, unable to meet Myra's eyes. On the ride home, silence again. But this time it wasn't emptiness. It was something heavier, full of unspoken realizations. Isabel looked out at the city lights reflected in puddles. She whispered to herself, I'm done being quiet. And maybe that's what growth sounds like. Not a roar, but a whisper that refuses to fade. Have you ever been trapped with someone who forced you to see yourself differently? Someone whose presence broke your silence? If you have, you'll understand why storms sometimes come just to push two souls under the same roof until they finally start listening. Got it. Act 5. Backstory unveiled. This is where hidden truths surface, wounds are revealed, and everything the audience thought they understood about Isabel, Mira, and Victor deepens. The tone here will be emotional, cinematic, layered, full of quiet discoveries and broken memories rather than explosions. Dialogue and subtext will do most of the heavy lifting. And, as always, this will be one continuous flow, no breaks, seamlessly readable for your text-to-speech app. Reflection/CTA moments will remain gently woven into the story's voice. The morning after the flood, the sky was pale and washed clean, as if the storm had taken with it the grime of the world. But inside the Laurent mansion, silence was heavier than before. Isabel sat at the dining table, staring at her untouched breakfast. Victor was on the phone, his voice sharp, commanding, trying to reclaim order as if business could patch the cracks in his household. When he hung up, he said, You're suspended until further notice. The school needs to assess the damages. Isabel didn't look up. So do we, she murmured. He frowned. What? Damages, she said. You can't see them, but they're there. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Isabel, I don't have time for riddles. You could have died yesterday. And she saved me, Isabel said firmly. The girl you tried to erase. She shouldn't have been there. Neither should I. He pushed his chair back abruptly. You're becoming your mother. The name fell between them like a ghost. Isabel looked up slowly. Then tell me about her, she said. You never do. He hesitated. There's nothing to tell. There's everything to tell, she whispered. I only know fragments, whispers from people too afraid to speak near you. Tell me why you hate her memory. His face darkened, but she didn't stop. You talk about discipline and control, but I see fear, father. What are you so afraid I'll find out? Before he could answer, a maid appeared hesitantly in the doorway. Sir, the girl from yesterday, Mira, she's outside. She said you asked her to pick up her family's last payment. Victor straightened. Send her to the office. I'll handle it. Isabel's heart leapt. Let me talk to her. No, he said sharply. You've done enough. But Isabel was already moving, her pulse thundering. She found Mira waiting near the side gate, her clothes damp, her hair tied back. You shouldn't be here, Isabel whispered. Mira gave a sad smile. I needed to sign the final release. Your father wanted everything in writing. He doesn't waste time, Isabel said bitterly. He never does. Myra's eyes softened. He's scared, you know. Of what? Losing control. People like him, they build walls so high they forget what the sky looks like. Isabel looked toward the house. Then maybe it's time someone climbed over. She reached in her pocket, pulling out a folded photo, creased. I found this in one of the attic boxes last night, Isabel said. It's my mother. But look, she handed it to Mira. The photograph showed a young woman smiling, arms slung around another woman in a cleaner's uniform. In the background, the old Academy logo was faintly visible. Myra's eyes widened. That's my grandmother. Isabel nodded. I thought so. Her name was Rosa Santos, right? Yes, Mira whispered. How do you? My mother wrote her name on the back. She said, Rosa, the only friend who understood what freedom meant. The wind rustled between them. Mira looked stunned. They knew each other. Not just knew, Isabel said. My mother worked as a volunteer at the academy before she met my father. Rosa helped her when she first arrived in the city. They must have stayed friends, even after she married him. Mira shook her head slowly, connecting the threads. That's why he hated us. Not because of class, but because your mother defied him, and we were her witness. From the house, Victor's voice bellowed, Isabel. She flinched. Mira grabbed her hand. Go. I'll handle the paperwork. Just be careful. But Isabel didn't move. He's lied about her my whole life, she said, trembling. He made her sound weak, emotional, unstable. But she wasn't. She was strong enough to love someone like him. And that's what broke her. Victor appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Inside. Now. Mira stepped back, eyes wary. Isabel turned to him. Tell me the truth about my mother. About Rosa. His jaw tightened. You went digging where you shouldn't. She was your wife, Isabel said. She deserves more than your silence. For a moment, something flickered behind his cold composure. A memory, a regret. Then he exhaled. Your mother was kind, he said slowly. Too kind. She believed in things that don't exist, equality, compassion. She thought the world could change if you just loved hard enough. He looked at Mira. She spent too much time with that woman's family. Gave them money, influence, attention. People talked. I tried to protect her reputation. You tried to control her, Isabel said. His voice hardened. I tried to protect you. By erasing everything human in this house, she shot back. By making me afraid to feel. He looked at her for a long moment. Your mother's heart was too open. It got her killed. It was a car crash, Isabel whispered. An accident. She was driving to see Rosa. In the storm. I told her not to. She didn't listen. His eyes were glassy now, the truth cracking his armor. I never forgave her for choosing them over me. Isabel's breath caught. You don't even realize it, do you? She said softly. You've spent your whole life punishing everyone who reminded you of her courage. Mira stepped forward, voice gentle but firm. Mr. Laurent, she didn't choose them over you. She chose what you couldn't. Love without fear. He looked at her, really looked, maybe for the first time. There was defiance in her gaze, but also empathy. For a moment, he seemed smaller, just a man standing in the ruins of his own pride. Then he turned away. Take your payment and leave. When Mira walked out of the gate, Isabel followed her halfway down the driveway. The morning light touched Myra's face, turning her hair to copper. What do we do now? Isabel asked quietly. Now we stop letting his story define ours, Mira said. We make our own version. Isabel nodded, tears rising. I'm scared. So was she, Mira said. Your mother. But she went anyway. They stood there, the ghosts of two mothers between them, bound by history and defiance. For the first time, Isabel didn't feel small in her pain. She felt part of something larger, something brave. Sometimes the truth isn't there to hurt you. It's there to free you, even when it arrives soaked in grief. Have you ever found out something about your family that changed the way you saw yourself? Not as broken, but as continuing a story that began long before you? Maybe that's the kind of inheritance that matters most. It was strange how silence could change its texture. A week ago, silence between Isabel and Mira had been heavy with loss and resistance. Now, it was soft, cautious, full of something that might become peace. The flood damage had closed the academy indefinitely, and the Loron estate, for all its grandeur, had never felt emptier. Victor left early each morning, disappearing into the city, leaving Isabel alone with thoughts that refused to stay still. Each day, she found herself walking, not driving, walking, past the edges of town to the modest community center where Mira had begun volunteering to help with cleanup work. She told herself she was going there to help, to give back, to prove something useful to herself. But every time she saw Mira, bent over a table sorting donations or talking gently to a child, she knew it wasn't about usefulness. It was about remembering what real felt like. The first time Isabel showed up, Mira blinked in surprise. You're out of place here, she said, not unkindly. Isabel smiled faintly. So was my mother. That earned her a half smile. Grab a broom, Mira said. Let's see what you're made of. The work was exhausting, scrubbing floors, sorting food supplies, painting walls. But it gave Isabel something her wealth had never provided, a sense of purpose that wasn't borrowed from someone else's dream. When her hands blistered, Mira showed her how to tape them properly. When she dropped a bucket and water splashed everywhere, Mira just laughed and said, You're improving. By the end of the day, they were sitting on the back steps, drinking from paper cups of instant coffee, hair damp with sweat, the air smelling faintly of soap and dust. Isabel looked out at the rows of half-cleaned rooms and sighed. I don't know why this feels right. Mira glanced at her. Because you're not pretending here. Isabel nodded. I used to think I needed to be perfect, that if I could just be who he wanted, he'd finally love me. Mira sipped her coffee. And now I just want to be someone I like. Mira smiled. That's harder than being perfect. Isabel laughed quietly. Yeah, but it feels more honest. Days turn into weeks. They worked together, not always talking, but always understanding. There were moments that felt suspended in amber. Mira humming softly while cleaning paint brushes, Isabel sketching murals on the center's walls, both lost in the rhythm of doing without overthinking. Sometimes the children would ask, Are you two sisters? And they'd laugh. Something like that, Mira would answer. One evening, after most volunteers had gone home, Isabel lingered by the mural she'd been painting, a swirl of blue and gold forming two hands reaching toward each other. Mira approached quietly. It's beautiful, she said. It's not finished, Isabel replied. Neither are we, Mira said. Isabel smiled at that, but her eyes softened with sadness. Do you think my father will ever change? Mira was quiet for a long moment. Change doesn't always look the way we want it to. Sometimes it's just the absence of cruelty. Sometimes it's admitting regret in silence. Isabel looked down. He hasn't spoken to me since that day. He's thinking, Mira said gently. That's a start. The air smelled of fresh paint and rain through open windows. Isabel turned to Mira, voice low. Do you ever get tired of being the strong one? Mira laughed softly. All the time. But strength isn't about not breaking. It's about breaking and mending differently each time. You make it sound easy. It's not, Mira said. But we don't have to do it alone anymore. A breeze drifted in, carrying the scent of wet earth. Isabel brushed a strand of hair from Myra's face without thinking, her fingers lingering for a second too long. Mira didn't pull away. You always do that, Mira murmured. What? Touch things like you're afraid they'll disappear. Isabel's voice caught. Everything I care about usually does. Mira reached out, placing a hand over hers. Not this time, she said softly. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Two people who'd built walls were finally sitting in the ruins, learning that sometimes ruin is just another word for beginning. As the sun dipped low, Mira stood, brushing the dust off her jeans. You should go before it gets dark, she said. You know how rumors spread. Let them, Isabel said quietly. I'm tired of living in other people's stories. Mira smiled. Then write your own. That night, Isabel returned home to find a mansion dim, her father's office door closed. She paused outside, hearing the faint sound of piano music playing from within, a recording she hadn't heard since she was a child. Her mother's favorite piece. Slowly, she opened the door. Victor sat alone, head bowed, the photo of her mother and Rosa on the desk beside an empty glass. When he looked up, his eyes were tired, softer than she'd ever seen them. I was wrong, he said simply. The words fell like rain in a drought. Isabel stepped closer, unsure whether to believe them. About what? About strength, he said. About love. His voice cracked. You remind me of her. I used to think that was a curse. Now I think it's the only part of me that still feels human. She didn't know what to say. For once, she didn't need to. She just placed her hand on his shoulder, an olive branch instead of an accusation. He didn't push it away. That small gesture felt larger than any apology. Later, when she told Mira about it, Mira only nodded. Maybe he's learning too, she said. Isabel smiled faintly. He said he wants to meet you. Myra's eyebrows lifted. That's either progress or a trap. Probably both, Isabel said, laughing softly. But maybe that's how change starts, clumsily. For the first time, Isabel's laughter didn't feel like rebellion. It felt like recovery. Sometimes healing doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It just arrives in quiet, ordinary moments, shared coffee, wet paint, soft forgiveness. Have you ever felt that too? That peace isn't something you chase, but something that happens when you finally stop running? Maybe the heart heals the moment it's brave enough to stay still. The invitation came on a crisp Friday morning, printed on thick ivory paper sealed with a Loron crest. Community Rebuilding Initiative, sponsored by Loron Enterprises, it read. Isabel stared at it, stunned. At the bottom, in her father's neat, deliberate handwriting, was a note. Asterisk Mira Santos and her mother are invited as special guests. I think it's time I heard her story myself. Asterisk for a moment, Isabel didn't believe it. Then she smiled, the kind of fragile hope that trembles even as it blooms. She called Mira immediately. He wants to meet you, she said breathlessly. Mira was quiet on the other end. That's good, right? Isabel bit her lip. I think so. Maybe he's finally ready to see what I see. The event was held in the Loron Auditorium, newly renovated after the flood. The banners were white and gold, the speeches polished, the crowd buzzing with polite admiration. Mira arrived with her mother, both dressed simply but with dignity. Isabel ran to meet them, her heart pounding. You look amazing, she said, pulling Mira into a quick, nervous hug. Mira smiled, though her eyes searched the crowd. Where is he? Inside, Isabel said. He's different now. She believed it, or needed to. Victor was standing near the stage, surrounded by investors and reporters. When he saw the three of them approach, the room seemed to pause. He greeted Myra's mother with a formal handshake, then turned to Mira. You're the girl who saved my daughter, he said. His tone wasn't warm, but it wasn't cruel either, more like a man trying to relearn a language he'd forgotten. Mira nodded. I just did what anyone would. He studied her for a long moment, then said, Your grandmother was Rosa Santos. She was a good woman. Myra's eyes widened slightly. You knew her well. Too well, Victor said softly. She never feared telling the truth. It made her dangerous in the best and worst ways. The conversation might have ended there, fragile but civil, if it hadn't been for the journalist hovering nearby. "Mr. Laurent," she said brightly, microphone raised, "would you say today marks a new chapter of unity between your family and your workers? Some might find this reconciliation quite poetic." Victor smiled stiffly. "Let's not exaggerate. This is simply charity." Mira froze. Isabel's smile faltered. "Charity." The word stung. The journalist pressed, sensing tension. "But isn't it true your daughter and Miss Santos have become close friends? Some say inseparable?" The audience stirred. Victor's jaw tightened. "Children form attachments easily," he said with a dismissive chuckle. "It's admirable that she's been kind to the staff." The laughter that rippled through the crowd was polite, but cold. Isabel felt the air leave her lungs. "Father," she whispered, but he kept smiling for the cameras. Mira took a step back, color draining from her face. "Kind to the staff," she repeated under her breath, the words tasting like ash. Isabel reached for her hand, but Mira pulled it away. "Is that all this is to you?" she asked quietly. "A gesture." "No, Mira, please, he didn't mean it he meant it exactly like that," Mira said, voice trembling. "You thought he changed, but people like him don't change, they rebrand." Victor turned sharply. "Watch your tone, young lady." Mira looked him straight in the eye. "I've been watching my tone my whole life. Maybe it's time someone listened to what it actually says." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. Victor's face went rigid. "You will leave now," he said coldly. Isabel stepped forward. "No, she won't." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. "Isabel," he said warningly, "don't embarrass yourself." "You already did," she said softly. "By pretending empathy is something you can buy." The journalist tried to intervene, but the moment had already fractured beyond repair. Myra's mother tugged her daughter's arm gently, whispering, "Let's go, Mija." Mira hesitated, eyes meeting Isabel's, hurt, betrayed, but still filled with something deeper than anger. "You wanted to believe in him," she said quietly. "But belief without truth is just another kind of blindness." Then she turned and walked away. The hall erupted into murmurs. Victor barked orders to his staff, demanding control over the narrative, but Isabel didn't hear him. She was already running after Mira, the sound of heels echoing against marble floors. "Mira, wait," she called, but Mira didn't stop until they reached the courtyard. The night air was cool, the first stars trembling above. "I thought he meant it," Isabel said, breathless. "I thought you wanted him to be something he isn't," Mira said, voice shaking. "And you wanted me to forgive him for you." Isabel flinched. "That's not true, isn't it?" Mira turned, eyes glistening. "You needed me to believe in your story of redemption because you couldn't bear to face the truth that some people only love when it's convenient." Isabel's chest ached. "He's my father," she whispered. "I've spent my whole life trying to make him proud." Myra's expression softened, but her words stayed sharp. "And in doing that, you forgot to be proud of yourself." Isabel shook her head. "Don't say that. Don't make this about me. It's always been about you," Mira said, the pain finally spilling out. "You have the luxury to hope. I have to survive. You can walk away from this world whenever you want. I can't. And still, I tried because I thought maybe we could meet in the middle. But the middle doesn't exist when one side holds all the power." Tears blurred Isabel's vision. "So what now?" she asked helplessly. "Now," Mira said quietly, "I walk away before loving you becomes another thing I lose." She turned, and Isabel didn't follow this time. She just stood there, watching as the girl who'd saved her walked out of her life for the second time. Somewhere inside, a part of her cracked open, not cleanly but jaggedly like glass under pressure. Back inside, Victor was still performing damage control, but his voice faded into static. Isabel slipped away, driving aimlessly until she reached the edge of the flooded district where she and Mira had once worked. The mural they'd painted was still there, half-worn by rain, the two hands reaching for each other, colors fading but not gone. She touched it gently, her fingers trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the empty air. for believing that love could exist without courage. That night, she sat by the mural until dawn, rain beginning again in soft, relentless drops. For the first time in her life, she didn't try to stop crying. She let the grief come like a storm she owed herself. Sometimes the breaking point isn't betrayal, it's awakening. Have you ever believed so hard in someone's change that you forgot to protect your own heart? Maybe that's what shatter points are for, to remind us that love without truth isn't love at all, just illusion painted gold. The morning after the gala, the world felt muted, as if the city itself had absorbed their shame and sadness. News outlets replayed the clip again and again. Isabel standing up to her father, Myra's defiant words echoing through the marble hall. Victor Lawrence's public relations team called it a misunderstanding. They released statements about bridging social gaps and celebrating community, but the footage told another story. A father who used charity as armor, a daughter who finally broke the illusion, and a girl who refused to bow. Isabel turned off her phone and sat in her room, curtains drawn. Every part of her body felt heavy. The silence wasn't peaceful this time. It was the kind that made the heart echo too loudly. She hadn't heard from Mira since that night. Every message she typed felt too small, too late. I'm sorry. He didn't mean it. I should have stopped him sooner. None of them seemed like enough. Words were too fragile now. She wandered through the mansion, bare feet quiet on marble floors. Her father was nowhere to be seen. The staff avoided her eyes, polite but distant, like she carried something contagious, truth perhaps. In the study, she found a photo she'd never noticed before. Her mother standing beside Rosa Santos, both smiling, sunlight in their eyes. On the back, a note written in her mother's looping script. Asterisk, love is the only inheritance worth fighting for. Asterisk, Isabel traced the words with her thumb, her breath trembling. For the first time, she realized that her mother hadn't been the fragile one. She had been the brave one. She had loved beyond permission, beyond fear. Meanwhile, Mira sat on the small balcony of their apartment, legs pulled up to her chest, watching the traffic far below. Her mother was asleep inside, exhausted after another shift. The news had found her too. A neighbor had asked if she was that girl who yelled at the Billionaire. Mira had just smiled tightly and said nothing. The world loved stories of rebellion until it realized rebellion had consequences. Work offers vanished. Clients hesitated. Their already small life had shrunk even smaller. She knew it wasn't Isabel's fault, not truly. But every time she thought of her, the ache in her chest grew sharper. Still, beneath the anger, there was something else, a pull. Isabel's voice lingered like an unfinished song, the kind that refuses to fade even when you try to forget it. Mira took out her old notebook, the one she used to write her poems in before everything became chaos. She flipped to a blank page and wrote, Asterisk, love isn't about the walls we break. It's about what we do with the rubble. Asterisk, at the Loron mansion, Isabel sat in the kitchen long after sunset, staring at a glass of untouched water. When Victor entered, she didn't look up. He hesitated by the doorway. For once, he didn't wear a suit, just a worn gray sweater she hadn't seen in years. The press won't let it go, he said quietly. They want me to make a statement. Then tell the truth, she said without lifting her head. Tell them you used kindness as decoration. He winced. You think I don't see it now? She looked up sharply. Do you? He sighed, leaning against the counter. When your mother died, I told myself I'd never let emotion cloud judgment again. But all I did was build a prison and call it discipline. I thought I was protecting you from weakness. And all you did, Isabel said, voice breaking, was make me afraid of love. He nodded slowly. You're right. The admission startled her. For once, there was no defense, no deflection, just weary truth. What do you want from me now? She asked softly. He looked at her, and his eyes were red. A chance to make things right. Not with speeches or cameras. With her. With you. He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded letter. She dropped this that day at the gala. I didn't read it. Isabel opened it with trembling hands. It wasn't long, just a few lines in Myra's neat handwriting. Asterisk. If love has to choose between pride and truth, I hope it chooses the kind that stays, even when it hurts. Asterisk. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. She wrote this for me? For herself, I think, Victor said quietly. But maybe it's time you both stopped being afraid. Isabel stared at the letter for a long time. Then she stood. I have to go. She found herself running through the city, rain starting again, light and persistent. It was almost poetic. Every turning point in her life seemed to arrive under rain. She reached the apartment building, breathless, drenched, heart pounding so hard it drowned out the sound of traffic. She knocked once, twice, then again, harder. Mira opened the door in pajamas, startled. Isabel. The sight of her was enough to unravel weeks of tension. Isabel's voice came out in a broken whisper. I don't care what they say. I don't care what he did. I just need you to know I believe in him because I wanted to believe love could change people. But I forgot love only changes those who let it. Mira stared at her, eyes wide. Why are you here? Because I choose you, Isabel said. Not out of guilt, not out of pity, but because every time I think about what's right, it's your voice I hear. You're the truth I kept running from. Myra's jaw trembled. You can't just show up like this, Isabel. My mother. Our lives, they're not like yours. I know, Isabel said softly, but I'm not asking to fix anything. I'm asking to stay. For a moment, all Mira could do was stand there, torn between fear and the ache that had haunted her since that night. The rain kept falling, and Isabel stood under it, refusing to move, water running down her face like forgiveness waiting to be given. Finally, Mira sighed, stepping aside. You'll catch pneumonia out there. Then let me in, Isabel whispered. She did. Inside, the small apartment smelled of chamomile and rain-soaked laundry. Isabel stood awkwardly by the door, dripping onto the tile. Mira handed her a towel. You're impossible, she muttered. So are you, Isabel said, smiling weakly. Mira shook her head, but her lips curved. What if this doesn't work? She asked quietly. Isabel met her eyes. Then at least we tried without pretending. For the first time, they didn't need words. The silence between them was no longer distance. It was a bridge. Isabel reached out, and Mira took her hand. No grand confessions, no cinematic music, just two people choosing each other, finally without fear. Outside, thunder rolled far away, but the storm was fading. Sometimes the bravest choice isn't leaving. It's staying after the breaking. Have you ever stood at that edge, torn between protecting yourself and reaching out anyway? Maybe the heart's real strength isn't in how it endures pain, but in how it opens again after it. The city was quieter the next morning, sunlight melting through the last of the rain clouds. For the first time in weeks, the Laurent estate gates stood open, not for cameras, not for curated charity events, but for something simple and human. Victor Laurent was hosting a community breakfast, personally, without assistance or fanfare. The old warehouse that once separated his world from theirs was now half-painted, scaffolding up, laughter echoing through its halls. Isabel walked beside Mira as workers and volunteers bustled around, their hands streaked with color and promise. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Mira paused by a wall where the mural had begun again, two hands reaching, almost touching, this time painted by dozens of people. You came back, she murmured, half to herself. Isabel smiled. You didn't think I'd let you finish without me, did you? Mira smirked. I wasn't sure you'd want to be seen with the staff. Isabel reached out, gently brushing a strand of paint-streaked hair from Myra's cheek. I don't care what anyone sees anymore. The only thing I care about is what I see when I look at myself, and I want that reflection to be someone who didn't run away. Nearby, Victor was stacking boxes with one of the construction workers, sleeves rolled up, face flushed with effort. It wasn't a performance this time. It was penance turned into practice. He caught Isabel's eye and nodded once, not as a businessman, but as a father learning humility one gesture at a time. Myra's mother, Rose's daughter, stood beside them, handing out coffee with a smile that carried quiet forgiveness. You're early, she said warmly to Isabel. First time for everything, Isabel replied. Your mother would have liked this, she said softly, and the older woman nodded. She would have said, "At last, people are building instead of boasting." The laughter that followed was easy, unforced. As the day went on, Isabel and Mira found themselves alone by the half-finished mural. The smell of wet paint and the hum of conversation filled the air. Mira dipped her brush, then hesitated. "You ever think about how this started?" she asked. "A tutor who couldn't study, a janitor's daughter who refused to stay quiet." Isabel chuckled. A flood, a mistake, a fight, a miracle. Mira looked at her. "Do you think this, us, was fate or just chaos finding meaning?" Isabel smiled softly. "Maybe both. Maybe chaos is fate's favorite disguise." They painted in silence for a while, strokes slow and deliberate. At one point, Isabel whispered, "I never said thank you for saving me that day and for teaching me what I didn't want to learn." Mira glanced at her. "And what was that?" "That love isn't comfort," Isabel said. "It's courage." The afternoon stretched golden, laughter echoing across the open courtyard. When the mural was finished, Isabel stepped back, breath catching in her throat. The hands on the wall now touched, fingers intertwined, forming a bridge of color across the divide. Beneath it, Mira had written in small, careful letters, "Asterisk, love is the only inheritance worth fighting for." Asterisk. Isabel turned to her father. "You knew she wrote that," she said quietly. He nodded. "Your mother used to quote Rosa every time I lost myself in numbers." His voice cracked. "I think she was warning me." "Then listen now," Isabel said gently, "because this isn't about fixing what's gone. It's about building what's left." Victor exhaled, long and heavy, as if finally setting down a weight he'd carried too long. "I don't know if I can ever make it right." "Then start by not pretending," Isabel said. "Start by showing up." He nodded. "I'll try." And this time, she believed him. Later that evening, when the crowd had gone and the courtyard was quiet again, Mira and Isabel sat on the steps, sharing the last cup of coffee. The air smelled of rain and paint and renewal. "You realize," Mira said softly, "we've done everything backwards. Usually people fall in love first, then face the storm." Isabel laughed gently. "We met in the storm. The love came as the calm." Mira leaned her head on Isabel's shoulder. "Maybe that's the only kind that lasts." They sat in silence for a long time, watching the lights flicker across the half-healed city. Somewhere in the distance, a choir was rehearsing, their voices faint but steady. For the first time, Isabel felt not small, not fragile, but whole. When Victor came outside, he paused at the sight of them, his daughter and the girl who had taught him to look beyond pride. He didn't interrupt. He just watched quietly, a faint smile crossing his face before he turned away, his steps lighter than before. Isabel whispered, "Do you think he'll really change?" Mira smiled faintly. "He already has. He let us finish the wall." Isabel chuckled. "You think that's enough?" Mira turned to her, eyes soft but certain. "It's enough for now." The moon climbed higher, silver light spilling over them like a benediction. The wind carried the scent of wet concrete and hope. Isabel closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw the girl she used to be, the one afraid to fail, afraid to love, afraid to fall. And then she saw Myra's hand reaching through the flood that night, steady and sure, pulling her out of the dark. That image, that gesture, would forever be her beginning. Love had come quietly, without permission, but it had stayed because it was honest. Maybe that's what love really is. Not perfection, not rescue, but the decision to see someone completely and stay anyway. And in the reflection of the new mural, where color and light met across broken stone, two figures stood side by side, no longer separated by names or walls. Just two souls who had chosen each other, and in doing so, chosen themselves. Sometimes redemption doesn't roar, it breathes. Sometimes love doesn't announce itself. It lingers, patient and unafraid, until we're ready to stop running. Have you ever forgiven someone not because they earned it, but because you couldn't carry the weight anymore? Maybe forgiveness isn't the end of love. It's the way it begins again. As the final brush of wind rippled across the courtyard, Isabel and Myra's fingers intertwined, and the mural behind them glowed faintly under the streetlights, a quiet promise painted into the bones of the city. Love had begun in a flood. Now it lived in the walls,